This coronavirus is bigger than 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or anything we've ever seen before. And on the biggest picture of all, the coronavirus and the coming financial collapse marks the end of the industrial age and the beginning of the information age. It's a very big move. And the people that are in trouble today are people still stuck in industrial age thoughts. Those of you at home right now who are sitting going, but I'm going to lose my job, my house, my pension, and all this, it's because you're trapped with old thoughts. And as most people know is that, when I came up with Rich Dad, Poor Dad 20 something years ago, mainstream media crucified me. They said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, the rich don't work for money. Savers are losers. Your house is not an asset. And I was crucified, just crucified. The good news is, as several of your guests have said, the most important thing you can have right now is not job security, but meaningful work. So you and I don't need the money, but our work is meaningful. And it's our meaningful work that gets us through the hard times. So the good news is my company is sold out. We cannot keep up with product. The bad news is the supply chain shut down, but that's a good problem. We have tons of cash. I have gold, I have silver, and I do have challenges in the real estate market, but that's going to make me stronger. That's my only attitude I can have. Otherwise, I just cry and say, well, the government should take care of me. I need a bailout. I need a stimulus. Stimulus means welfare for the rich. When I talk to young people, which drives the school teachers, I don't go back to schools anymore because I'm not politically correct. I went back, so when I would explain the Fed to them, I said, well, just think of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. There was the Tin Man, there was a Straw Man, and there was a lion with no heart. And so they thought they could go see the wizard, and the wizard would give them what they asked for. They prance along the yellow brick road, and they pull back the curtain, and there's a midget back there. This big illusion. That's Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, and this guy Powell, and before that was that other character, I forget his name already. Everybody thinks they're wizards, but they're controlled by grunge, gross universal cash lace. Our wealth is stolen via the money we work for. Is we need financial education, because the real problem of this crisis started back in 1904 when the richest guys on earth took over the education system in the United States. They formed a thing called the General Education Board. It was formed by guys like Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. And what they pulled out of education was financial education. And so the reason they could rip us off, as you and I know, is via the mechanism of money. And that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was a warning shot across the bow back in 1997. I said, wake up, something's coming down the road. So we're here right now. This is the biggest transformation in the history of the world. It's from industrial age to information age. Brian Rose is doing well because you made the transition. I'm doing well because I made the transition. I'm making more money than ever before. I have problems, but I'm making more money than ever before. But if you're losing money right now, the problem starts in what you were taught in school. Because they never taught you anything about money. They never taught you about a financial statement, like my rich dad did. They teach you that diploma is everything. It's a piece of toilet paper. That's what it is.
And you buy into that mechanism of money, and you believe that is the only thing to focus on. And what you're saying right now with these stimulus packages is all of this money being given, quote unquote, away by the government to everybody is actually devaluing your dollar. It's devaluing your pension, it's devaluing your savings, and it's wiping out businesses. So you're dying by this sword.
Yeah, and the harder you work for money, the poorer you're gonna get. That's the tragedy. So this is how what Fuller talked about, the prison is inside our head, Buckminster Fuller. It starts with misinformation and misorientation. Misinformation, misorientation. And he says, how dare our schools punish kids for making mistakes? How else do you learn if you don't make a mistake and learn from your mistake? He says, God designed us to learn by making mistakes. For instance, a baby learns to walk by falling down. Baby learns, to ride a bicycle by falling off the bicycle. Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer ever in the history of the world, because he made more mistakes than you and I did. But our schools punish you for making mistakes. That's misorientation. 2008, it was, those credit default swaps. It was for residential real estate. So they bailed them out. This next crash is for the hedge funds and private equity that invested in all this commercial real estate. So I have another $100 million project coming out, but I just got bailed out. I just got backed up by the Fed and the government. So that's why it's socialism for the rich. Unfortunately, there's capitalism for the poor middle class, those that work for money. You're on your own. You run a small restaurant and you got to let go of your staff. You're no different than your staff right now.
And so how does this play out for the average worker, Robert, for the small business owner? I mean, what does the next 3 months look like? Because it doesn't look pretty. I mean, people are already being laid off, made redundant. There's no cash flow in most of these businesses. How does that play out?
The national debt for World War II was $25 billion. Every day they're printing $125 billion. That's like 5 World War IIs per day. They're printing so much money to keep this think of a hot air balloon with a tear in it. And they're doing desperately trying to fix this tear, but no matter how hard they try, the tear has gone beyond, it's coming down. So in financial terms, it's called our debt to GDP has now gone to 120. We're bankrupt. My message is the same as some of your other guests. This is metamorphosis time. Financial education in Rich Dad's terms is really financial transformation. Metamorphosis, the definition is the evolution or the transformation from an immature form to an adult form. Metamorphosis is the same as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And Fuller always said there's nothing to predict a butterfly inside a caterpillar. So everybody listening right now, if you're struggling financially, just think of yourself as a little caterpillar. And this crisis is your cocoon. The question is, what do you emerge as? Do you emerge as a victim? You know, the world did that to me, and the same as my health. I am ground zero for the coronavirus. All that does is inspire me to get healthier. You're either going to get healthier and wealthier, or you're going to go bust. It sits between your ears, your heart, your body, your mind, your spirit, your attitude. This could be the best thing that ever happened to you if you turn on to a butterfly, or somebody will step on you like a little worm. It's your choice.
Because you're the only person I think I've ever had in the studio that makes the connection between wealth and that sense of purpose and spirituality and connects it. And most people have a really hard time seeing that. They say, no, the money's over here and my purpose is over here, and never shall the two meet. But in a time like this, where most people are scared, they're watching their money go out the window, some are going to be able to realize and say, wow, this is the greatest moment of my life where I'm going to be forced to transform, and I can completely look at money in a different way, wealth in a different way, my purpose, start doing what God wants me to do. Or they can batten down the hatches and get the last piece of toilet paper and hold on and keep doing the same behavior. It's their choice, right?
I'm not religious, but what you just said was gospel. The choice is between your head, your heart, your body, your mind, your spirit. That's where the choice, the metamorphosis, the evolution or the transformation from an immature form. You grow up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially, and health-wise. Voila, this is the best thing that happened to me. But if you're still a victim, the metamorphosis begins when you look in the mirror. And it's just like when I was going to blow this little boy's head off in Vietnam. I said, why am I doing this? Why am I going to kill this little 10-year-old boy? Now, he was a Viet Cong. I mean, I was justified by the rules of engagement to shoot him. But one day I wondered, why am I doing this? And if you're standing in front of the mirror today, with this coronavirus and looming depression, how did I get here is the question. What don't I know? What did my information, education, cultural background, what did not prepare me for today? That's where the transformation or the metamorphosis begins. I mean, you take responsibility. Everybody talks about rights, but we have personal responsibilities too. And unfortunately, our university systems have failed us miserably. And the reason for that is every professor wants tenure. That's my whole family. That was the most important thing about getting a job was tenure, job security for life. And that's what they teach kids without knowing it. They teach kids that life is dangerous and you need to be protected. So they're immature. College professors are some of the most immature. They might be very smart mentally, but immature financially. They can't take care of themselves. So they're teaching kids to be victims. That's why these trigger mechanisms and you can't say words that are hurtful and all this stuff. So they're teaching that you're a victim, you're vulnerable. And what you teach and what I teach is that, hey, don't be a victim, Be proactive.
Can you just talk me through a few asset classes and explain kind of what's going on? Because I still think it's important for you to walk us through some basics, Robert, and whether that's real estate or oil or gold and silver, which you call God's money. Maybe you can give us all just a quick education on kind of some of that stuff. And I also heard you talking about something called the US crypto dollar. I don't know, maybe you could define some of those things for us.
Well, as I said, you and I have seen the wizard.
Yeah. So at least we see the wizard, but most people don't, but at least we see it for what it is, right? We see that when big checks are being written, no matter if it's in the UK or the US or any other country, that means that basically they're giving the money on this way and they're taking it back the other way. They're taking it from us somewhere because money doesn't come for free.
Correct. So let me go back in time. So 81 I started studying Bucky Fuller 3 times, one of the greatest geniuses of our times. He was a futurist. So he was teaching us how to see the future. Then he passed away July 1st, 83. Then he published this book here, posthumously, The Grunch of Giants. And with that, I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because what does God want done? We need financial education. So it was my rich dad who taught me that, not my poor dad. My poor dad was a PhD, poor, helpless, desperate. So then I followed this book when I saw, right after 9/11, I saw the next increment come in, Rich Dad's Prophecy. And I said the biggest financial crisis was going to come in 2016. Now, I didn't foresee quantitative easing, but we didn't have back in 2002 when this book was published. There was no quantitative easing, and there was no zero interest rate policy. And I went, oh my God, and then Trump got elected. So this was postponed 4 years. It's here today. Rich Dad's Prophecy is more true today than ever before. And it's about why the biggest stock market crash in history was still coming. Wall Street Journal trashed me. They took me to the cleaners. Said, you don't know what you're talking about. And I don't blame them because I was threatening their nest, you know what I mean? So I wrote this book, so it's here today. The point here is this, as you and I know, because we've seen Inside the Machine, we've met the wizard. The real problem isn't the stock market. The real problem is the shadow banking system. The banking system, the financial markets we don't see, which is the repo market, the consumer corporate credit market, and then the commercial paper market. They're broke. So this stuff was happening in September last year, but they keep hyping it, CNBC and those guys. I know they have a job to do. They keep hyping this market up. So the market was hitting great peaks. And so I told my friends who have 401ks and IRAs and all this stuff, I said, hey, did your financial planner call you in December and tell you to get out? No, they told you to stay in. They told you to stay in, and meanwhile, the stimulus package comes in, it jacks the price. After they started to deflate, the stimulus market came in, they popped it up again so guys could escape, so the rich could escape. Meanwhile, they're on CNBC telling you, stick it out, stay for the long term, the market will bounce back. Oh, give me a break. Are you that stupid? Can't you see what they're doing? And the fact is they cannot. So this crash, as you know, just prior to this crash was called the everything bubble. Stock market was high, real estate was high. I don't know what else was high. Gold and silver, everything was high. The trouble now, everything's deflating. I'm in serious trouble financially at one end because I own hotels and I have 8,000 rental units. Today, they're not paying rent. Now, does that affect me? Of course it does. But the way the rich, or my rich dad taught me to play the game, is I have LLCs and S corporations and C corporations. Corporations, I hide behind that. I own nothing technically. They can sue me for my money, but they'll sue a limited liability corporation. They can't touch me. So this is what I taught in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So it's not the asset. I have businesses, I have real estate, I don't have any stock sponsorship. I have gold and silver, I have oil. Now, is my oil guy in trouble? No, because he didn't finance his oil drilling with debt. So some people are doing really well because they saw this coming. So it's not the asset class. It's really understanding or looking behind the curtain, seeing the wizard. Right now is Powell, Larry Summers, and these guys. I mean, they misled us totally. So am I going to cry? No. What am I going to do? I'm going to change me. I can't change them, but I can change me. That's my attitude.
And what's happening with gold and silver? We're seeing that fascinating. I mean, you can't find that stuff. And why do you call that God's money?
Well, gold and silver were here when the earth was formed. You know what I mean? It'll be here long after we're gone. It's God's money. God made it. In our language, it's called counterparty risk. There's no counterparty risk. Your counterparty is God. That's pretty good. That's like a co-signer is God. You know what I mean? The banks will back you up. Oh, who's your co-signer? Oh, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. Okay, we'll give you the money. So gold has that. Now gold goes up and down because the gold market is manipulated. The futures market, the ETF market, GLD, SLV, and then physical gold. So the thing I think is interesting is the price of gold goes down, but you can't buy any gold at the physical market. So the futures market is coming down, the GLD price is coming down, paper market is coming down, but physical, you can't get anything on it. Why? It's because the rich are hoarding it. The rich are hoarding gold and silver like toilet paper and guns. The poor and middle class are calling their financial planner, and the financial planner is telling them to stay in it for the long term. And meanwhile, the rich are getting out. Wake up is my message.